Hello, Broken Girls. Time for week one's challenge, I guess. And I'd like to read you a story rather than tell one. And so I'm going to read you a story from The Melancholy Death of Oyster Boy by Tim Burton. And the story that we're going to read is Robot Boy. You get to see the pictures while I do it. Oh, there we go. Mr. and Mrs. Smith had a wonderful life. They were normal, happy husband and wife. One day they got news that made Mr. Smith glad. Mrs. Smith would be a mum, which would make him the dad. But something was wrong with their bundle of joy. It wasn't human at all, it was a robot boy. He wasn't warm and cuddly, and he didn't have skin. Instead there was a cold, thin layer of tin. There were wires and tubes sticking out of his head. He just lay there and stared, not living or dead. The only time he seemed alive at all was with a long extension cord plugged into the wall. Mr. Smith yelled at the doctor, "What have you done to my boy? He's not flesh and blood, he's aluminium alloy." The doctor said gently, "What I'm going to say will sound pretty wild, but you're not the father of this strange-looking child. You see, there is still some question about the child's gender, but we think that its father is a microwave blender." The Smiths' lives were filled with misery and strife. Mrs. Smith hated her husband, and he hated his wife. He never forgave her unholy alliance, a sexual encounter with a kitchen appliance. And Robot Boy grew to be a young man, though he was often mistaken for a garbage can. It made me giggle first time I read it, so yeah. I don't know. Now I give you one other one. Well, you can get a view of my boobs, no doubt, when I put this down. Or the ceiling. I'm sure it's a very exciting ceiling to look at as well. Where's the interesting one? Okay, this one because it makes me cringe and laugh all at the same time. Oh yeah, you see me again. He proposed in the dunes. They were wed by the sea. Their 9-day-long honeymoon was on the Isle of Capri. For their supper they had one spectacular dish, a simmering stew of mollusks and fish. And while he savoured the broth, her bride's heart made a wish. Hang on, this page. That wish did come true, she gave birth to a baby, but was this little one human? Well, maybe. 10 fingers, 10 toes, he had plumbing and sight. He could hear, he could feel, but normal, not quite. This unnatural birth, this canker, this blight, was the start and the end and the sum of their plight. She railed at the doctor, "He cannot be mine, he smells of the ocean of seaweed and brine. You'd count yourself lucky, for only last week I treated a girl with 3 ears and a beak. Your son is half oyster, you cannot blame me. Have you considered by chance a small home by the sea?" Not knowing what to name him, they just called him Sam, or sometimes that thing that looks like a clam. Everyone wondered, but no one could tell. When would young Oyster Boy come out of his shell? When the Thompson quadruplets espied him one day, they called him a bivalve and ran quickly away. One spring afternoon, Sam was left in the rain, at the southwestern corner of Seaview and Maine. He watched the rainwater it swirled down the drain. His mom on the freeway in the breakdown lane was pounding the dashboard she couldn't contain, the ever-rising grief, frustration and pain. "Really, sweetheart," she said, "I don't mean to make fun, but something smells fishy, and I think it's our son. I don't like to say this, but it must be said, you're blaming our son for your problems in bed. He tried salves, he tried ointments that turned everything red, he tried potions and lotions and tincture of lead. He ached and he itched and he twitched and he bled. The doctor diagnosed, I can't be quite sure, but the cause of the problem may also be the cure. They say oysters improve your sexual powers. Perhaps eating your son would help you do it for hours." He came on tiptoe, he came on the sly, sweat on his forehead and on his lips a lie. "Son, are you happy? I don't mean to pry, but you dream of heaven, have you wanted to die?" Sam blinked his eyes twice, but made no reply. Dad fingered his knife and loosened his tie. As he picked up his son, Sam dripped on his coat. With his shell to his lips, Sam slipped down his throat. They buried him quickly in the sand by the sea, sighed a prayer, wept a tear, and were back home by 3. A cross of grey driftwood marked Oyster Boy's grave. Words written in the sand promised Jesus would save. but his memory was lost with one high tide wave. Back home safe in bed, he kissed her and said, "Let's give it a whirl." But this time she whispered, "We'll wish for a girl." So, there you go, there's your stories. I hope you enjoyed my awful reading.